All right. Hi, I'm Avery,
This is Lily.
and welcome back to the From the Closet podcast. Today, for our free movie of the month for uh, October, we're doing How to Train Your Dragon. Um,
How
in
fun.
in the previous episode, I said that Planet Hulk would be our second episode, but it's actually going to be our third episode, and it's probably going to be releasing on the same day as this one. So it's
A lot
whatever.
of technical difficulties happened last week that I don't want to get into,
Well, we don't really have to get into it, but it's
but if you want
whatever.
to.
Before we, actually get into the movie, obviously this episode's going to contain spoilers for How to Train Your Dragon, and you will find a link in the description where you can rent or purchase the movie. However, it is also free apparently on Amazon Prime Video and IMDb TV, which has to be the most difficult streaming service name to say in a speedy manner. But for me, Amazon Prime Video just wouldn't work on my PC. Like it wouldn't let me watch it. I had to watch it on mobile. But yeah, and you don't need you don't need to pay for Prime in order to watch it though.
Because it's free on IMDb TV.
Well, even on Amazon Prime, it's free. Like I don't have
Oh
Prime on my
yeah,
Amazon account, and I was able to
it's only
watch it with the
only free
mobile
on
app.
it's only free on Amazon because it's also free on them. I'm just gonna from now on be saying streaming service.
Yeah, but anyway, this episode got delayed a bunch. We are not very far ahead in our recordings, and I'm hoping we can get much further ahead. But let's get into it. Um, this is a DreamWorks movie, which I find interesting because DreamWorks is known for making pretty good movies, and then they make a pretty good sequel, and usually their third movie ends up being terrible. But apparently, this series broke that curse. I can't really speak to that very
I
much
can. It is a
because,
very. I remember. I couldn't actually see the third movie in theaters. But when I saw it, I went to Fred Meyer and I saw it on like the DVD shelf. And I was like, I am buying this no matter what. I watched it the same day.
yeah. But as far as I know, I might have seen How to Train Your Dragon 2. I definitely have not seen the third one. And if I did see How to Train Your Dragon 2, I don't remember anything about it.
Yeah, I'm probably
So,
the only one who knows everything about How to Train Your Dragon. And I've been debating this ever since we watched the first one. I think it's now my favorite. Either one, two, or three is my favorite movie of all time.
hmm. I definitely would not put How to Train Your Dragon in my top 50 favorite movies. Just personally.
Yeah, I think there's so many elements I love about this movie. Um, the animation is beautiful.
The
The
animation's really
opening,
great, and some of the music is pretty banging, honestly.
I would put most of this movie, like most of the soundtrack, playlist worthy.
But anyway, we when talking about this movie, you have to analyze like three different relationships that are going on throughout the movie. You have the relationship between Hiccup and his father. You have the relationship between Hiccup and Astrid, and you have the relationship between Hiccup and Toothless. But before we get into
The
that, let's just
relationship
talk about
between
that
Hiccup and
opening.
Cat.
Let's just talk about that opening for a second. It's very reminiscent of, I think, Avatar: The Last Airbender's opening, where you have this shot where you're just like rushing forward across the landscape. And of course, in Avatar, that leads to seeing the Fire Nation army, and then they, firebend at the screen. But in this, you end up seeing the village, which this village, is, your traditional Viking village, but instead of having, to deal with pests like mosquitoes and worms and gophers and stuff, they have to deal with dragons.
Oh,
And
dragons are so cute. Sorry, I'm just like,
we see our character Hiccup, who's like not built like the other Vikings at all. And he wants to kill dragons because that's what everybody in the village does.
Burke, by the way.
Okay.
Just making sure you know.
Anyway, he wants to kill dragons because that's what everyone does. But he's not built for it. And like we see very early on his engineering skills. So, it'll make things that happen later down the line much more believable by establishing early on that he has this talent for engineering. But he ends up shooting down a Night Fury, and nobody believes him. And
Not many people know what a Night Fury is because it's really undocumented.
Yeah, pretty much. So, like, this really is, our starting point for both his relationship with Toothless and his relationship with his father. And we see that Hiccup's relationship with his father is not a very healthy one. His father basically doesn't listen to him at all, and just a lot of the times Hiccup even calls it out and says, this conversation is very one-sided. And it's very clear that Hiccup's father wants him to be someone that he just isn't.
And another thing is that, like, you see Hiccup also kind of want that, but not. I guess from, his dad's standpoint, he's getting very mixed messages on does he want to kill a dragon, does he not?
Well, see, the problem is that Hiccup wants that because it's what his father wants for him. It's what the rest of his village wants for him. Also, we get, pretty early on as well, sort of the establishment of a little bit of his relationship with Astrid, where clearly he's got a crush on her, and she barely knows he's alive at this point in the movie.
And the most interesting thing about Hiccup right now is that, he's the chief's son.
Yeah, exactly. So he shoots down a Night Fury, and then, nobody believes him. His father gets angry and tells his friend to make sure he gets home because he doesn't even trust Hiccup enough to get home on his own. So he then goes out and starts, I don't know, it looks like he just goes out and starts drinking with his friends. That's just what it seems like. And they get to talking about trying to find the dragon's nest. Apparently they've tried time and time again and have always failed, but they want to make another go at it. And basically there's also this conversation while we're there of Hiccup's dad talking to what seems like his best friend about, potentially just letting Hiccup into dragon training school. But meanwhile, at the same time, Hiccup has snuck out of the house and gone to find Toothless, finds Toothless, who at this point isn't named Toothless at all. Finds Toothless and can't kill him. So instead, he just cuts all the rope and stuff that, he ended up shooting down Toothless with, that he got Toothless tangled up in. And we don't really...
pounces on him and then just decides,
to spare
I
him.
guess the old saying, an eye for an eye. Hiccup spared him, so he spares Hiccup.
I don't know if an eye for an eye fits here because
It's basically the opposite, but
Hiccup
I can't
did.
really fit. I can't really fit anything else to it.
Hiccup kind of did, clip Toothless's tail wing.
Though it does get addressed later in the movie, so
Yeah, later. But at this
let's
point, I
continue.
don't even think Hiccup is aware that Toothless can't fly because of what he did. But we get to this conversation between Hiccup and his father, where his father's like, "You get your wish. You get to go to dragon training," and Hiccup's like, "Well, I don't want to go." But his father, of course, does not listen. Um, so we cut to seeing, we get to see more of Astrid once, Hiccup starts going to the dragon training school. And it's very clear that, he's not, Hiccup isn't taking this whole thing very seriously. He kind of just fumbles around a bit. And he's just like asking his instructor questions, like as if it were a class setting, but in the middle of a fight.
Though the questions help him learn more things about Toothless.
Yeah, and we also see this book that nobody else bothers to even read. That is basically like a guide to the different dragons. And you get to the Night Fury page, which is the type of dragon Toothless is, and it's pretty much blank. And we learn, oh, nobody's ever seen one and lived to tell the tale. So
So then Hiccup will see one and then live this.
yeah, and he starts getting to work. Like he goes to see Toothless again, and realizes, oh, I clipped his wing, and basically he then starts getting to work on crafting a new
I
tail wing
like about this
for
scene is
Toothless.
you made it clear that he obviously has a knack for crafting, but in the opening scenes as well, it also shows Gobber's Gobber's crafts. It shows how he's going to do it too. Where he does it and whose supplies he's using. Like it sets up all of this just in the intro part of the movie.
I don't know if I noticed that in particular, but we go on. We get a kind of montage sort of thing where Hiccup, just is learning more about dragons from Toothless. Then he applies that knowledge in the arena where he's fighting dragons. And then the more he learns
Mhm.
about dragons within the dragon training school, he can then apply that knowledge to Toothless. So it's basically just like a closed loop. And he ends up becoming a celebrity almost overnight because he's just like excelling at this school. And we get to see like this relationship with Astrid develop a little bit where she basically starts taking an interest in Hiccup um, and wondering what the hell is going on and how did he suddenly, you know, do a complete 180 and become the best student at the school, even better
Is
than
he really
her.
Hiccup? Is it an alien? Is it a dragon in disguise?
And so she pretty much stalks him on one of his trips to go see Toothless. And she encounters Toothless. Initially, she goes, on the offensive,
And both
which
want to
leads
kill each
Toothless.
other?
Yeah, like it leads Toothless to go on the offensive, and Toothless has to stop both of them from killing each other. And then Astrid
Yeah.
runs away. Something I didn't understand is Toothless goes in the opposite direction, and then somehow he's got Astrid.
Well,
That
in that same scene is where, Hiccup was like, where the hell are you going?
like, even though he says that, I still don't really understand how, he ends up getting Astrid. It doesn't really make sense, but it's not that big of a deal.
Well,
Um,
at least for me, I feel like it's because, well, you can't have Astrid talking, and then Toothless is way faster than Astrid.
but yeah, we get this whole scene where, like, basically, Astrid, is initially just, like, very distrustful of Hiccup and, like, won't listen to anything he says, but then he eventually manages to convince her to take a ride on the back of Toothless. And this honestly is one of the scenes where I relate to Hiccup a lot, because it's like the ride on Toothless's back is kind of roller coaster esque, but um, but Hiccup is just like completely chilled through the whole thing. And like talking normally, and he's like, "Thank you for nothing, you useless reptile." And it's just like exactly how I am on roller coasters. They don't really do anything for me.
I think it's funny definitely on how Hiccup is like, we need to make her like us.
Yeah, and they do pretty well with that. Because after while they're on this ride, yeah, because I'm gonna get to that in a bit. While they're on this ride, they come across the dragon's nest, and this is the first time we see the really big dragon. Who I forgot what they called it in the cinema therapy video, but I know they never said the name in the movie.
I believe like the name comes later. And okay, it might not be the same dragon, but it could be the same dragon that they have to face against in How to Train Your Dragon 2. So it all basically like loops around.
Okay. But we see this big dragon, and we essentially learn that the dragons, which have been stealing the villagers' food, are actually just feeding it all to this really big dragon. And this big dragon is even eating the smaller ones. So it's just like we learn that, they don't actually have to kill the dragons. They just have to kill this one. And then the problem will stop. And we cut forward. Toothless almost gets eaten, along with Hiccup and Astrid. But we go forward to the point where, the Hiccup and Astrid have dismounted from Toothless, and they're talking. And Astrid punches. Astrid punches Toothless, and yeah, right, Hiccup. Sorry. Astrid punches Hiccup and is like, "Oh, that's for kidnapping me." And it's kind of a funny moment because, like, he gestures to Toothless and Toothless does nothing. And then she, like, kisses him on the cheek and is like, "Oh, that's for everything else."
The relationship between Hiccup and Astrid it grows throughout the series, and it's really good. Like,
Yeah, we don't see much of Hiccup and Astrid in this movie, but I sure do hope that we see more in How to Train Your Dragon 2 and 3.
You're gonna see a lot more. The only, like, I have to say, the relationship between Hiccup and Toothless is, like, the best thing in the movies. But the second would obviously be Astrid and Hiccup, because
And so during this whole scene, there's this whole negotiation where Hiccup is desperately trying to prevent Astrid from just going and telling everyone about the big dragon, because there will be questions and they'll find Toothless and yada yada yada. But the next day, I think it's the very next day, Hiccup is picked to be the one to kill a dragon. and he just won't. And at this, not only is he not going to do it, but at the same time, also his father comes home from their trip to try to find the dragon's nest. Of course, they failed, as usual. They fail at everything, including being parents. But anyway, he learns that Hiccup has basically become a local celebrity just kind of overnight and is excelling at the dragon school. Um, so he goes to watch Hiccup kill a dragon, but obviously Hiccup won't do it. And then his father, kind of just goes into a rampage trying to, make the fight stop, which, angers the dragon. And the dragon basically attacks Hiccup, and it's this whole heaping mess, and Toothless basically comes to try to rescue Hiccup. And, of course, Toothless gets captured, and Hiccup gets thrown into a room, which, he can easily get out of. And you have probably the worst scene in the entire movie, where, Hiccup's father reveals himself to be just, even more of an absolute dick.
Normally I'm the one that's swearing.
I mean, it kind of he's the type of father figure that I absolutely despise. So, he doesn't listen to his son at all. And then, people kind of be like, people will kind of try to, make him seem a little better because of that staggering move that he does, after he slammed the door. And to me, that doesn't really justify anything he's done. Like, he's still an ass. He still continues to be an ass for more of the movie, but not necessarily the rest of the movie. By, chaining Toothless into captivity and forcing Toothless to lead them to the dragon's nest, where they blow a hole in the side of, it looks like a kind of mountain-esque thing, maybe a volcano. And, they fire like this really big cannonball that's like flaming, and it shows tons and tons of dragons just lining the walls of this cave, and then they all just start fleeing, not even bothering to fight the humans. They just start fleeing because clearly they're scared of this really big dragon that, Hiccup actually warned his father about, but of course his father is an ass and didn't listen. So, they're kind of screwed until, Hiccup and Astrid basically...
Odin saved them.
Yeah, Odin saved them. Hiccup and Astrid start talking, and, they figure that they and all the other students in the school are going to get dragons, ride on them, and go to try and rescue everybody.
This is where Astrid's... I actually don't know if Astrid names the dragon in the first movie.
Okay.
But I know the name is Stormfly.
I don't think I heard that name within the movie. But, yeah, so basically you have this whole fight of all these different dragons fighting the big, scary dragon. And there's some interesting little pieces of continuity where, like, they're, making loud noises to disorient the big dragon, but it also is disorienting the dragons that they're riding.
That is a nice touch, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a nice little attention to detail that, keeps things from feeling lazy. So essentially, what we end up with is, before Hiccup can reunite with Toothless, the big dragon sinks the ship that Toothless is chained to. So he goes underwater, like Hiccup goes underwater to try to rescue Toothless, but obviously he can't really do it. So
Who had
his
drowned
father,
before. Yeah,
yeah, he would drown before he finished.
Stoic not only saved Hiccup, and then went back, saved Toothless.
Yeah, exactly. And I forget exactly how it happened, but at some point, Astrid is no longer on her dragon.
I
And
forgot that. Yeah.
yeah, and she and pretty much all the other students basically have to stand on the ground and watch from the sidelines, and Stoic as well, and literally everyone else in the village. They just have to stand there on the ground and basically watch something they can't even really see and hope for the best. But eventually,
Obviously,
Toothless
Hiccup.
ends up beating.
Yeah.
Obviously, Toothless ends up beating Big Dragon, but also a thing happens, and Toothless is diving down towards a massive fire to try to save Hiccup because he's fallen off. And did he did he lose consciousness?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. I can't remember because it's been over a week and a half since I watched the movie.
I remember that because in the next scene, Hiccup wakes up and Tooth's like, "Oh, I love you, Tooth. Wait, where are we?"
yeah, and like we see uh, Hiccup's father distraught because he thinks that Hiccup is dead. Um, which I still don't think actually I still don't think he's fully redeemed. Not for me yet. Any parent who even remotely cares about their child a little bit is going to be distraught when they're dead.
Well, okay, for Stoic, I'm going to have to redeem him a bit more. He's not only thinking about the welfare of his child, he has to think about the entire, uh, village of Burke. You know, these dragons have killed hundreds of, their civilians. And then overnight, you just learn that, oh yeah, I'm just friends with our number one enemy, by the way, BTW. Like,
But it's not exactly, he doesn't even take the time to even listen to Hiccup's side of the story. He just basically shouts, throws him in a room, and takes off. And this is eerily similar to the conversation about the King of Hyrule in Breath of the Wild. But unlike the King of Hyrule in Breath of the Wild, Stoic isn't completely screwed into a situation of just choosing one or the other, like being a bad leader or being a bad father, where the King of Hyrule just was. Like, because if he let Zelda basically do whatever she wanted, the kingdom would be destroyed, which is what ends up happening in Breath of the Wild.
I feel like, and everyone looks up to Stoic. He is Stoic the Vast. And you can't just, he is basically thinking about these dragons killed many people, and then, well, Hiccup makes a good argument. He is still filled up with pure, unfiltered rage.
Like I said, though, his actions at the end of the movie, they do not, in my opinion, redeem his character. I think the second and third movies will have to put in some work to redeem the character for me, and potentially they
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
Hmm. That tone of voice does not give me much hope.
Not for the reasons you suspect.
Well, something that I definitely already know is that while um, circumstances have changed, personalities don't really change that easily, which I think is basically going to be the plot for the second movie.
Yeah, and a big thing about the plot of the second movie, you can already see it with the Book of Dragons. Obviously, there was so many more dragons that you will not even see in the first movie.
Yeah, there were a lot of dragons introduced by that book that we never ever saw in the movie. And
And
then
I
I
don't think it's
assume,
much of spoiler that what was it, Fish Legs will end up taking over that book and start, making revisions to it.
was Fishlegs the guy who was like just like reciting stats in the middle of a battle?
Yeah, basically, which is honestly his greatest strength that you don't see in this movie because he was a nerd in this movie.
He was very much a nerd. But yeah, it's a very good setup for the second movie. I don't really know where they go from here, aside from circumstances have changed. How do the personalities adapt to it? Um, but we'll see, because we're going to cover the second movie eventually on here.
Mhm.
How long have we been going
30
for?
minutes.
Yeah, not very long. This is a much shorter one, but
I mean, I honestly still have a few things to say. It's not
well, go
um.
ahead.
So, and what is noted in the what was it, Cinema Wins video? The
Hmm.
lighting. Oh, the lighting is so good in this movie.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to do lighting in animation because with lighting in a live action setting, you actually have the equipment to work with. You
Yeah,
have to, you're using actual lights, but in animation, you're literally trying to convey lighting with color, which is a lot more difficult.
and I honestly feel like they nailed it so hard. This movie, and they just keep improving it with the next two movies. Um,
And we'll get to that when we get to that.
Also, this mostly applies for the next two movies, but damn, Toothless is so cute.
Toothless is honestly like a conglomeration of cat, dog, and dragon.
And
It
they really let, his, cute soft side out in the second movie, but even in this movie, no matter how Cinema Wins put it, was like, if he let his wife, make the scripts, it would just be all the ones who like, "Aww."
yeah, a bunch of toothless wins. Which now that we've talked about the Cinema Wins video enough, I guess I have to put it in the description of this. If you're listening to it on YouTube, you'll be able to find that video in the description, as well as a link to purchase or rent the movie. Um,
I mean, it's a great movie, but well used for. I mean, I watched all three of them, so I don't actually know which one was like the first movie, which one was what wins were the other two movies. But
right. So anyway, I've covered everything that I want to cover about this movie. Have you got anything else left to say?
I guess I just want to recover the music because the music. The intro to Burke will always be, I think, my favorite intros to any movie. I think that's about it.
Okay. So I guess now we get on to rating this movie. So how would you rate this movie?
I'm feeling very generous, and it's not just because oh cute dragon, but I want to say maybe 9 out of 10. Not going back.
Okay, not even a decimal point in that? Because, like,
Yeah, 9 out of
my
10.
favorite movie, Scott Pilgrim, like, I gave that movie a 9.9. And I will
I feel
very
like
likely never give a 10 out of 10 to any movie.
the
Unless
next
some movie.
movies will get a better rating out of me.
Okay. But yeah, I don't think any movie is ever going to score a 10 out of 10 for me, but it is certainly possible because there are definitely movies that don't exist yet.
That's true.
But I think I'm going to give this movie a 7.3. I think it is really good, but there's not enough here to keep me coming back to this movie time and time again to watch it, as there is with a lot of other movies that I like. I would not be opposed to rewatching this movie, but it's not something that I think I would actively seek to rewatch.
Yes, especially when you actually told me about, this is what the movie we're gonna be doing, I was so on board with it.
Yeah, like I saw that this was actually I think you saw that this was available for
No,
free.
well, you told me you saw a rumor that was available for free, and then you asked me to check if it was.
Yeah, and then we basically just decided then and there that if it was still free come October, because we discovered this in like the last week of December,
September.
September. Yeah, words. What are they?
Hmm.
The last week of September, we discovered that it was available for
I
free.
just
So we
hope
were like,
that the second movie continues being on Netflix, and I can, help you with the third movie.
yeah. Um, I mean, again, worst case scenario, I can always just get it from my local library. If they,
That's
I
true.
mean, even if they don't have it, I can just request them to order it. So
I guess
basically, yeah, my rating 7.2.
and I think closing out, I have just one more thing to say. I might will spend a lot more money on merch after this.
But
Just
yeah,
now I'm reminded of it.
once again, if you want to purchase How to Train Your Dragon, the link will be in the description. You can also watch it for free on IMDb TV or Amazon Prime Video. And I think that is all.
As for now, we haven't come up with an outro yet.
Yeah, we don't really need an outro.
I like
Bye.
outros.